Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second session of the 2022 Grad School Success Summit. It is wild that now it's been 5 years that the summit has been in existence. And I'm so happy that you all are here and thankful to you for being in our community and sharing a little bit of your evening with us. Tonight, we're again on our second session, and I'm super excited about our speaker because Lee, I feel like showed up last year and spoke so eloquently and like really in a way that resonate for me at least about mental care, mental health. And she's doing the same thing this year in a different spin, talking about the prioritization and how important it is that we go to therapy, which I love. I think it's so important. A little bit more about Lee. She prioritizes the health and wellness of young Black women by making mental health more attractive and accessible to the modern young woman. And I think you'll see today that is absolutely spot on as she shares her session for us today. So Lee, thank you again for coming back to the Grad School Success Summit. I'm so happy to have you here and to hear your expertise. I will turn it over to you.
All right. I want to thank you for having me back. Again, I'm grateful to always be in community with like-minded women. I've got a little playlist because I'm grateful for music that lets us be free and dance and fun. So I'm really feeling it. All right. And that's where I brought the title of my presentation from, right? Grad school is not going to break our soul. And we're going to talk about how we're going to make sure that doesn't happen, right? How we're going to navigate this experience.
What you doing up there?
Okay, I keep getting muted, but I'm back. So today, our agenda, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. We're going to talk about the data, right? We're scholars here, so we're going to talk about just what we know to be true about mental health, about college students, about resources. We're going to talk a little bit about mindset and how we need to approach this experience that we're all embarking on. I'm going to follow up with lots of resources, right? Because honestly, that's why you're here. You're like, give me the good stuff. So we're going to do some resources. I'll have a quick follow-up, and then I want to make sure to leave time for your questions and possibly answer anything I can to help you. So a little bit about me. I am a therapist. I'm an LPC. I practice in the state of Texas. As Alante mentioned, I primarily work with young adults. Young Black women are my jam. The shared experience is unmatched, right? And that's important in therapy. And just witnessing that and also experiencing that, it is important to me to, again, share this message far and wide, that we deserve a safe space and we deserve healing and that we deserve to be intentional about that. I am also a doctoral student. I'm entering my third year at Texas Christian University. I'm studying education, and my program really intersects at education, curriculum, philosophy, psychology, social justice. It's really complex, and I love it. My research interests center around mental health in schools, as well as mental health in marginalized populations. All right, so the data. One piece of data that I don't think is shared enough is how mental health shows up in adolescence and young adulthood. 50%, so half of all lifetime mental illness begins by the age of 14. Okay, that's high school, entering high school for most people, and 75% by age 24. So 75% of people who are going to struggle with some type of diagnosis, it's going to happen during this early young adult time frame in life. Okay, that's a really stark piece of data, right? A really important piece of data for us to realize how important it is for us to be on the front end of it. Because something I didn't put here, but that I should have, is that on average, there is an 11-year gap between the time that someone starts experiencing mental health challenges to when they get when they get treatment. 11 years. That is a huge gap, right? And we've got to start closing that. No one should have to struggle for 11 years before they seek treatment. And among college students, right, what most college students report struggling with include anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. I've got a typo, sorry, that's going to drive me crazy. Self-injury, and then I also left out eating disorders, even though that one's most common at the undergrad level. We've got a few people in the waiting room. I don't know if I can let them in. Okay. Of course, if you're in a marginalized population, you're more likely to experience these challenges. And this is not due to any shortcoming on our part, right? At our intersections, our many intersections of identity, we're facing different systemic and contextual factors, whether it's racism, whether it's financial barriers, right? These things further impact mental health. We have seen universities report a significant rise in the request for mental health services and this has been trending since 98. That's as far back as the data I saw, 98. My grandfather died in 98. That was a long time ago for me, okay? So this has been a trend, but of course now it's at the forefront because we have begun to exceed capacity, right? Exceed what can be met. And also they're reporting an increase in complex diagnosis, right? Meaning people are coming with multiple diagnoses. People aren't just anxious, right? People aren't just depressed. There are multiple traumas that people are reporting and bringing to campus with them. And then lastly, in 18, and keep in mind, 18 was before the pandemic. If you were trying to visit your school campus mental health counseling center, you had a wait list of over 2 weeks. And a lot of schools now are saying 3 to 4 weeks post-pandemic, right? So can you imagine someone in crisis, someone really struggling and being told you've got to wait a month before someone can serve you, right? So this data really truly speaks to things we need to take into account, knowing we are in this age bracket, most of us, right, that we are entering this institution where mental health is a challenge. So let's talk about what we do with this data. And again, we're going to start with our mindset. The thing is, the brain is developing and rapidly changing during 14 to about 25, rapidly changing, right? Neurons are firing, connections are being made. And then when you go off to college, right? Or you just experience the multiple transitions through college into adulthood to grad school, we're having changes in structure, right? Our day-to-day, our responsibilities, our relationships, right? This is a lot of stress. And grad school in itself is stressful. It just is. That's part of going. I think we walk into it knowing that this is going to likely be a stressful experience. And it's a whole different conversation to talk about how, in some ways, I'm sorry, that's my kids walking in downstairs. In academia, it seems like it's structured to be a struggle. But that part we can't control, right? So we're going to focus on what we can control. And a key part of that is just the education, the awareness. Not all stress is bad, right? There is acute stress that is very much a survival response that's necessary for us to live and survive in this world, right? There are times stress kicks in, right? And it releases all these hormones. Let's say you run into a tiger, right? Your stress hormones are going to kick in. It's going to release this cortisol. It's going to release adrenaline, and you're going to be pumped up, ready to fight or flight and get away, right? And that's going to keep you alive, right? That's how you survive. The problem becomes we're not up against tigers, right? It's not life or death, even though that's the way our brain and our body are perceiving it. And so the stress is good if we're going to use it to help us through a test, help us prepare for a race. But the problem is we get stuck in the stress, right? We don't overcome it. We get stuck there. And so that adrenaline keeps pumping, that cortisol keeps releasing, and that's unhealthy, right? That's how we end up with heart disease, which we know is one of the top killers of women. I think it may be the top killer of women right now. That's how we end up with diabetes and all these other chronic illnesses, right? So when we talk about mental health and physical health being related, this is what we mean, right? Your mental health directly impacts your physical health. So part of it is just learning to recognize what's going on in my body, right? Is my stress something that's helping me push through, or is it becoming a detriment? Right? There's just a level of awareness that we have to have in this process. And we also have to stop normalizing this stress, right? In grad school, I think there's kind of this mentality of, oh, no one's eating, no one's sleeping. That's not okay. That's not okay, right? And as Black women or women of color in general, right, we have to stop normalizing being superwoman, martyring ourselves for legacies, right? I know a lot of us, me included, are working on my grad or in grad school for legacy reasons, right? I'm a first gen college student. The only person in my family with a master's will be the only one with a doctorate, right? So we carry all this, right? We're superwoman. We got to show up for everybody. We have to be successful. We have to do all these things, right? And we have to start unpacking that story, that burden. We have to realize that we deserve ease, right? We deserve softness. We deserve rest, right? We cannot remain in survival mode. It is not sustainable. We are allowed to thrive. So yes, grad school may be stressful, but it doesn't have to be fully at our detriment, right? Two things can be true. Two things can be true. We can be grad school students and we can also maintain our health, physical and mental. And I just even want to share a personal story about that, okay? In 18, and I wasn't working on my doctorate then, but in 2018, I was pregnant and I lost my grandmother in 2018. And she was the most influential person in my life, right? And I'm sure that's true for a lot of us with our grandmothers, right? Biggest cheerleader. She got sick and died after a really short illness, but unexpected in a way. And I didn't agree, but did I go to therapy? Did I do anything about it? No. And then the next year, almost a year later, my best friend from high school was murdered in a very gruesome, violent, domestic violence incident, right? So 2 significant losses within a year of each other on top of having a baby. And again, just that whole mentality of, I don't have time to go to therapy, right? I got to feed kids. I got to do this. I don't have time to do this. I don't have time. When can I do this? This is more important. There was never enough time for me to take care of me. And, like I mentioned, that not being sustainable, right? I reached a very hard stopping point where I had to make some hard choices that might have looked differently if I had been a bit more proactive. So I share my story because I don't want it to be yours, right? You don't have to struggle. I know sometimes it feels like there's no way, but there is always a way, right? So what I'm giving you is even information that are things that I wish I had, right? Every day we're learning more and there are more resources being developed and more things being put out there. So I'm giving you what would have been helpful to me, right, when I was struggling. All right, so I'm going to start with executive skills. There are 7 main executive skills that we talk about, time management, leadership. I can't think of them all off the top of my head. But what I've done is kind of taken those and re-encapsulated them into just skills that I think are really helpful in maintaining mental health in graduate school, right? Our executive skills, I'll tell you, a lot of people struggle with them more than we used to. And I think it's partly because we're so distracted, right? Our attention is being pulled in so many directions. And so that keeps us from really functioning at a high level. And let me be honest, I don't believe people are lazy, right? I don't think people are lazy. I don't think, a lot of ways we label people and we label each other or ourselves. I really think it's just a struggle, emotional dysregulation, and lack of executive skill. And so these are the top ones that I think are most important in grad school. The first being boundaries, right? And we talk about boundaries all the time, and boundaries are something we struggle with, right? We struggle with not showing up for other people. We just talked about that, Kate. But boundaries are the point at which I can love you and me simultaneously, right? That I can give before it starts impacting my well-being. And we struggle with boundaries. I feel like I read somewhere, and I thought this was a really good way of putting it. Boundaries are hard because they're for our future self, not our current self. They're hard for the present self. It's a gift to the future self. And there's always a lot of tension between who we are and who we're trying to be. Okay. So practice boundaries. And you know what? Boundaries aren't always with people. Sometimes boundaries are with systems. Sometimes boundaries are with ourselves, right? Sometimes we got to set our own boundaries with ourselves. So I want you to really think about implementing those again for your future self, for the best version of you, for the free version of you, for the whole version of you. What boundaries need to be in place? Systems and processes. And let me tell you, this is a continual work in progress in grad school, right? And this was one of my hardest lessons returning to grad school, because I had a break between my master's and my doctorate. And again, lots of things changed, right? What's my process for reading articles? What's my process for writing paper? I feel like I need a process for everything, okay? Because otherwise you're getting overwhelmed. There's so much. What's my process for, just having some type of workflow, and keeping in mind that everything takes longer than you think it's going to take. Okay. Self-talk, huge one. Most of us are not truly aware of our thoughts, right? Our thoughts, for most people, occur at a subconscious level. I read somewhere that we only really process about 30% of our thoughts daily, right? That's not even half. That's not much. But I do encourage people, even in therapy, this is one of the first things I work on with people. Start checking in with yourself. What is the story you're telling yourself? We like to tell ourselves stories that, oh, I should have done this. I could have done this, right? I always should have, would have, could have. And that our self-talk really affects our emotions, and it affects our behaviors, right? So if we're speaking to ourselves in a way that is judgmental, that is critical, it's going to make us feel worse. And when we feel worse, regardless of what most people think, we don't truly grow in punitive situations and punitive environments, right? So if we can be more mindful of how we're talking to ourselves and meet ourselves with more compassion, right? With just recognizing we're human, right? Just being softer with ourselves, we are going to see a shift in our emotions and a shift in our behaviors, right? If we can speak to ourselves in a more encouraging way, we're going to feel a little bit more encouraged and motivated, right? And capable. So I really encourage you to dial into your self-talk as well. Virtual resources. So again, I mentioned there are many things out there now to help us be more present and mindful, right? Get out of the future, right? Which is really where our anxiety lies. Get out of the past, which is usually where our depression is stemming from. We want to stay right here in the present where we can control. So TBH stands for To Be Honest. It's a virtual platform where it's for students, and they form small groups based on particular topics. Haley is almost like a YouTube/blog for mental health for young adults. It's specifically catered to young adults. And then we have some other apps that I'm sure you guys have heard of with meditation practices to help you with sleep, to help you with you name it. Insight Timer is my favorite. They have a good amount of people of color moderating there, which again is important for us, right? That's important to us. And then I also don't want to minimize the impact of online groups for scholars, very much like Alante has created Black in Grad School, right? I'm doing a lot of talk about things that feel like self-care, but community care is top tier, and it's going to always be top tier. We thrive in healthy relationships. We thrive in, again, that shared experience. We thrive in belonging. And there are so many online groups, whether on Facebook, Instagram, memberships, things that you can take advantage of to help you, again, as you walk through grad school. And I can't speak enough about how much community is important during grad school, because otherwise it can feel very lonely, very lonely. The key here, low-cost therapy, right? Because ultimately, I want to see, I think everybody needs therapy, right? Therapists go to therapy, right? This therapist has been to therapy, different, been in return and left in return, right? It's not a one and done. Therapy is not for weak, right? It's not about something being wrong. Nothing has to be wrong to go to therapy, right? Again, it's just helpful to have a safe place. So when we talk through these options, right, we talked about on campus being an option. Most campuses offer a set amount of sessions with someone that that works for the counseling center for students. But as I mentioned, there's usually a long wait. And it's just not always accessible. The Loveland Foundation is one of my favorites. It's by Rachel Cargo. If you don't follow her on IG, you should. But you apply to their program and it runs quarterly in cycles, and you are awarded 4 to 12 free therapy sessions with the Loveland Foundation. And you are allowed to choose your therapist. It's your therapist of choosing. All you have to do is find your therapist. They give you a voucher, and the Loveland Foundation handles all the back end, everything else. Open Path Collective is another directory where anyone on Open Path, your fee is going to be between $30 and I believe $60. You're not going to, it may be 80, but I really think it's 60. You're not going to pay more than, I'm going to say $60 for a therapy session, which is low cost. That is very low cost for therapy. Then there are therapy groups, and I'll be honest, I don't see enough people take advantage of this. I do not see enough people take advantage of groups, and therapists are putting them on all the time, right? So when you have a therapy group, again, it's a group of like-minded people focused on a specific topic. And it's a very much more affordable option because, again, you're in a group, so you're not going to be paying as much as for an individualized one-on-one session. And again, people are doing groups all of the time. They're everywhere. But usually, I feel like, the marketing part is where most therapists still need to work, because I feel like enough people don't know about them because there's usually not a lot of people participating. But honestly, it's like one of the top things I think that goes underutilized. Then there's sliding scale. So in therapist talk, sliding scale means I'm seeing you for less than my full price. And most therapists offer a sliding scale. It's something you have to communicate and specifically ask for out front, right? So even myself, I have 2 clients right now on sliding scale who are not paying my full fee. One of them is paying me $30 a session, right? Because that's what she's got. We've got to develop a relationship. I get where she is in life, right? So it's okay to reach out and say, this is my budget. This is what can you meet this? Or can you refer me to someone who would be willing to meet me at a sliding scale? But that is the specific terminology we use, sliding scale. Black Girls Smile is another therapy fund, right, where you can apply and they will award you a certain amount of free therapy sessions. Inclusive Therapists, same thing. They have a therapy fund. Inclusive Therapists is pretty much as it sounds, right? So it's a directory full of BIPOC therapists, LGBTQIA. I never want to leave off one, right? There's so a lot of therapists that identify with marginalized populations are there, and they also have a therapy fund where you can apply and be awarded a set amount of free sessions. The Boris L. Henson Foundation, same. And this is the foundation by Taraji P. Henson that she created to focus on mental health. Therapy fund, right? You can apply and earn and get free therapy sessions. And again, this is multiple places where this is becoming more and more common. And there are some for specific states. I know Washington has one. So that's something like if you live in Washington and you're interested, reach out to me afterward. I'll give my contact information near the end. But there are others I try to include here, ones that are more mainstream, right, and applicable to everyone. The National Queer and Trans Therapists of Color also have a therapy fund specifically for people who identify as queer or trans. And then lastly, there's EAP. This is another underutilized service. Most employers offer EAP services. It stands for Employer Assistance Program. And with EAPs, you are able to get between, it depends on your EAP, 3 to about 12 sessions free through your employer. But again, most people I come across don't even realize they have an EAP. It's something you have to check with your employer about, but I'd say 90% of employers have an EAP. Okay, so you've got this list here as a good starting point to try to find affordable or free therapy. And like I said, some of these run in cycles. That doesn't mean you can't apply now, right? Again, be proactive. Now, if you are in crisis, right? If there is crisis, we don't want to wait, right? The National Suicide Hotline has now created their own version of 911 for mental health, and the number is 988. So you call this number to get on the phone with someone if you are in crisis, if you have any suicidal ideation, and there is someone available to help you, talk to you, make sure you understand that you are worthy and valuable and not alone. And in addition to the crisis hotline, there are warm lines. So warm lines are when it's not a crisis, it's not an emergency, but you're still struggling and need to contact someone in that moment. Those numbers vary by location, but it's something you can easily Google. Warm line for Texas, warm line for Florida, whatever it may be. And then you can pull up that number. So those are the resources I wanted to offer you today, but I wanted to stay on, keep in mind our energy, right? Going into this. Now my internet, y'all can see most grad students, I think, are like me with all the tabs open.
You won't break my soul.
This is our energy.
You won't break my soul. You won't break my soul. You won't break my soul. I'm telling everybody. Everybody.
Okay, this is our energy going into this school, going into this academic year. All right. I want to thank you. I've got 2 QR codes here. I'm really grateful for you being here. I can't speak to you enough. Like, I love being a therapist. Let me say, I love what I do, but I love it because of who I get to serve. But again, I know that everyone can't get to one-on-one therapy. And so having opportunities like what Alante is providing to get in front of people, to help people understand what's out there, what's available, right? I love this too. It's very much a part of the work I love to do. One QR code, I think the first one is a feedback survey, so you can help me make sure that I am giving people what they want and need to hear. I'm giving away a giveaway. I mean, there's a giveaway because I know got to give to get, right? So if you fill out this survey, it'll take 2 minutes. I think there's 8 questions. I'm doing a giveaway of a $25 Sephora gift card, random drawing, if you do the feedback survey for me. All right. And then I'm going to leave that open until the end of the summit. So we've got today, tomorrow, and the day after, right? 3 days. So there's that. The second QR code will get you a list of the resources, right? So I understand that, hey, it was in presentation format, you might have been screenshotting, but if you want like the list itself, if you go to that QR code, it will email it to you. All right, so I wanted to make sure you had that. I'm gonna leave that up for just a second. I can't even turn my music back on because my kids came and got my phone. I'm sorry. I was gonna close us out with a little bit more Beyonce. So hang with me. All right, everybody. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Lee, thank you so much. I was able to like figure out the code. Is it okay if I just drop the link in the chat?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right, I just dropped in the chat for y'all.
All right, there are 2 links. You can drop both.
I can do the other one. For those of y'all who are trying to do it, it's just a little bit of, you know, moving your camera around. It'll pop up.
All right.
Before we get to questions, Lee, thank you again so much. Like, I am just so happy that we were able to cross paths, and you just always share so much value and so much like authentic, like helpful information. I think the entire graduate school process is grueling, and we have to take care of ourselves. And I think you're giving us tools to help do that, strategies, resources, and just thank you for always providing that value. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so I'm ready for Q&A. I've got my contact information here. I know some people, you can email me. I promise it's okay if you email me. My website is there, and then that's my Instagram handle. But if you have a specific question, like, I am fine with you emailing if that's what you prefer.
All right, I will go back. I did see a question from Leela, I think, asking like, how do you find the groups? I'm thinking like therapy groups. How does one get tapped into a therapy group?
That is a really good question. So the most I see them, and let me say, because I'm a therapist, I follow a bunch of other therapists on Instagram, but that's mostly where I see them advertising them or marketing them. You'd be surprised. I don't know, do any of y'all follow therapists on Instagram? Yes or no? Right, there are a ton of therapists on Instagram sharing really good content. So even if you can find 1 or 2 that resonate with you, and then it kind of opens the door to seeing what other offerings they have. It also doesn't hurt to just, if you're looking for a therapist, to ask, right? Do you offer any groups, or are you aware of any groups on this particular issue? That works as well.
Thank you. I actually have a personal question. Like, when one is struggling, and especially the like very isolating kind of part of this graduate school experience, what do you recommend to help us, like any wording or verbiage when we are connecting with folks, to be like, hey, I actually do need help. I am struggling right now. Do you have any guidance or advice for words we can use to do that?
That's a great question. I do like of just being honest and upfront, right? Like, I'm having a hard time with fill in the blank. Could you help me or point me in the direction of someone who could? I'm very, very upfront. And something I love I'm seeing more of is that we're getting comfortable doing that, right? I think usually we try to like hide our needs, but we're human. We have needs. We're allowed to have needs. And I think one of the most empowering things we can do is say what we need.
I love that. I love that. I just want to highlight some things I tweeted out because it was just fire, right? One, we don't grow in punitive environments, and if we speak to ourselves in a more encouraging way, we can be more encouraged. I just wanted to like snap when you said that. Very, very like, it just resonated for me. And if you all have other phrases that were hitting for you, throw them in the chat. Of course, please throw more questions in here. Also, like, boundaries are hard for the present self. It's a gift to our future selves. And so, do you have any advice around that? Right, like I feel like that was really a wonderful shift in how we think about boundaries. But even with that information, one might still feel hesitant. So, like, what advice do you have for us?
I want to recommend an excellent book on boundaries. It's by another Black female therapist. She gives to me very practical ways to frame boundaries and say it. Like, she gives you templates pretty much, which we do well with. Her name is Nedra, Nedra, Nedra Tawwab, Tawab. And I think it's Find Boundaries, No Peace, something like that. I have her book. I don't want to go grab it though. But she gives really practical tips. But I also want you to, I see a lot of this on social media, and it kind of, I don't want to tussle with it. You know, no is a complete sentence, right? So the way we're putting boundaries out into the world is like, it has to be this harsh, rude, mean thing. And I think that's why some people are really hesitant to set them, because it feels like, oh my gosh, if I'm setting a boundary, I'm being rude, I'm being mean. You can set a boundary in a gentle way. Right. You can set a boundary by saying, I'm sorry, I can't. Right. You can, no is a complete sentence. Right. And there are people who need no to be a complete sentence. But for our loved ones, for people we care about, there's a way to say, hey, well, can we do this later? That's setting a boundary. Right. Just not even doing it at that moment. So just understand, it doesn't have to be a hard and final no, that you can provide context if that helps, right? If that softens it for you and for the person. You can set boundaries in a gentle way. That's usually how I set boundaries.
A lot of resonate. People were saying that book was good. It was very helpful. So thank you for sharing that for those of us who haven't read it. I just downloaded it like last week. Another thing you talked about was checking in with yourself, right? And what stories are you telling yourself? And I think for us, right, our brains are going 1,000 minutes a second. We've got 500 tabs open on our computers, right? So can you maybe help us, like, are there practices we should be implementing? Are there actions we can take? Is it, you know, what should we be maybe listening for? Like, anything you have in that space, I think would be helpful for us too.
Okay, I do. I have two things I like to recommend as a starting place, because I'll be honest, meditation is, again, top tier, but most people aren't ready for it. Baby steps, right? Most people, we're too distracted to sit down and meditate for 5 minutes. So I think a good starting place is we know when we're feeling bad, right? We know when we're feeling off. That we do recognize. We recognize if we're just like something, if we're upset, if we're angry. And I think noticing when that happens, sit with it, right? Go in and try to recognize, okay, what's going on in my body? What am I actually feeling? Right? Put a name to it? Because usually it's just we're feeling a certain way, but we're just keep going through the motions. Am I frustrated? Am I annoyed? Am I feeling insignificant? Am I disappointed? Right? Put a name to it. Something as simple as that is very helpful and empowering, and will help you move through it, right? That is a check-in. How am I feeling? And I really like to encourage people to kind of set reminders on their phone, maybe like 3 or 4 times a day, to go off just to check in. How am I feeling? Because what happens with most of us is nighttime comes and we're ready to go to sleep, and our brain is just still going, right? It's been going all day. It doesn't just shut off when we all of a sudden are ready. But having those intermittent moments throughout the day where we pause, right? That helps even with the sleep routine, with being sleep hygiene, is because it's a practice that you have to learn to pause your brain. And I'm gonna reach and grab this off of my bed, and off of my desk, and you'll have to excuse me because my 3-year-old got to this one. But this is a feelings wheel, and I give it to every client I work with, right? And what it is a list of hundreds of different emotions, right? Most of the time, we only identify with mad, sad, happy. We are so much more than that. We're so much more complex. You can Google feeling wheel and find this. And I even, like, when I work with clients, I give them little pocket ones, because when you stop and pause, just look at it and say, okay, this is how I'm feeling right now. Put it away, right? Just a simple check-in is the start of a practice in being intentional.
I love that. So there's a question in here. I see, if you disclose your struggles with mental health to family members in your community, mentors, family, friends, and they aren't able to hold space for you, they go ghost or they don't check in. How does one process that?
So I think you definitely process the disappointment, right? I think what is difficult for most people is that we internalize it, we personalize it. We think, oh, it's because of us, right? Or it's because, like that means something about us. When usually it's, and this is cliche, but it's about the other person. But think about it. We are not taught how to help people when they need help, right? Even when you think about someone grieving and we say stuff like, oh, they're in a better place, right? Like that's not helpful. So people don't have what is usually happening is people don't have the skill set to help you. It doesn't mean they don't want to help you. It doesn't mean they don't care about you, but people can only give what they have. And people don't have the knowledge, the skill set, those things to show up for you. And again, that doesn't mean anything about you. That doesn't mean anything about you. And I think that's a mindset shift we have to realize, right? And that's the same in relationships and everything. Sometimes we're expecting just what people don't have to give. And so it's so important to know or be cognizant of who are my safe people, right? Like, yes, we want often, again, because I work with young adults, they want their moms to, be a certain way or a certain person. But if you know that's not their skill set, then maybe that's not your safe person for this topic, right? You have to be mindful of who I can trust with this, who can support me with this. And that kind of helps with the disappointment or the letdown with people who can't.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you. I see another question in here, and I think, let me know if you want to keep going. But someone wants to know any tips on how to overcome that feeling of guilt when you aren't reading or writing. Like, how do we not compare ourselves to our peers and take the time we need when we're feeling burnt out?
Okay. So I want to say I share in that guilt, but I have a lot of that about this summer, right? The summer break. I think we normalize it, right? Like we are meant to feel a range of emotions. Feelings aren't necessarily good or bad. They're just messages. They're messages, right? So I think we've got to take the judgment even off of our emotions, normalize that there will be guilt in this process. I think we also need to recognize, right, where some people may have strengths, we have our own strengths. And so it's important to dial into those, right? When we're comparing, it's important to come back home to what are my strengths? Where am I killing it? Right? Maybe if you are, you're feeling guilty because you're not reading or something, can you celebrate that you prioritized your rest? Can you celebrate that, right? That I think our relationship with productivity has to change, right? Because the rest is productive too, right? We don't always have to be doing something. It's okay to just be. So again, it's that mindset. How are you talking to yourself about the guilt? Are you beating yourself up, or are you finding a way to shift it into something softer? And realize that it takes practice and consistency, right? Even in doing that.
I'm with one of the comments in the chat. Maria says, so good. And totally agree. Totally.
I'm glad it's resonating.
Yes. Well, I'm trying to see if there's any more questions that are popping up for me. I see a thank you in here for you. And that productive rest is productive. It's a whole word. I love that. I'm not seeing anything else right now.
Okay.
Is there anything else you want to leave us with, Lee, before we wrap up for the evening?
No, not really. I just wanted to leave y'all with that last little TikTok. That just made bless my soul when I saw that. So I did definitely want to leave y'all with that energy. But again, feel free to reach out if you have other questions. Be encouraged as much as you can. Again, recognize it will be hard. It will be hard. But like I said, two things can be true. You can maintain a sense of help while it's hard. Okay, it's okay to prioritize yourself.
That's right. Oh, thank you so much, Lee. This was amazing. There's some thank yous going off in the chat as well. We're just so grateful to have you here again. Was so happy when I saw it. Like, yes, oh my gosh, Lee's coming back. Ah, great. So happy you were here. Y'all, that is a wrap on the first day. I know. So yes. So Lee, thank you so much for all of these gems you dropped. Thank you so much for encouraging us to take care of our mental and physical wealth while we are on this journey. Tomorrow we start again, 6 o'clock, and it's going to be an amazing panel about community building. And then we're talking about balance, because we always want to learn more about that. That's always important for us. I think that's it for me, y'all. No IG Live this year because I'm prioritizing rest as well. And
boundaries.
Yes, had to create a boundary this year, y'all. But so happy to see everybody. Cannot wait to see you all tomorrow. Share all the amazing gems that Lee dropped on Instagram, on Twitter. I will repost and be sharing that tonight and tomorrow. Lee, thanks again, and I'll see you all tomorrow.
Thank you all. Hey, don't forget about that feedback survey. I got a $25 Sephora gift card for somebody. Right. Bye, y'all. Good night.
All right. Bye, everybody.